Welcome, bienvenue, welcome to a property podcast. The first of our week. We do 4 a week, starting with Property Matters, which is today, It's a Kind of Magic tomorrow, of course, Property Quorum on Thursday, and Cladding Matters on Friday. Try not to miss any of them. If you want to pick up any of the old ones, they are all in Spilling the Proper Tea, which is a channel on YouTube. Go and check it out. We've got some excellent humdingers on there, some great bun fights. Now, today, we are talking about a topic which seems to be constantly in the news and not always for the right reason. Let me read to you today's topic. It's AI versus estate agents. Who gets the value right? It's a good question. Hamish, would you care to start us off?
Well, yes, good afternoon to you all. We're both, Rowan and I reside in Oxfordshire. Well, at least where I am, it's glorious sunshine. I think there's sunshine streaming through Rowan's roof light, from what I can gather. Hopefully it is.
It is. It comes and goes. So I'm gonna run hot and cold.
Along with the sunshine, and I don't know whether they're connected. Rowan's Wi-Fi connection is a bit spotty today. That also comes and goes. So we're just going to bear with it, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah,
do carry on, Hamish. Do carry on.
You broadband on the 11th of May, and then it'll all be pucker.
Huzzah! Go on, sir.
Just as a point of interest, I tried to have a discussion with AI yesterday evening. Well, actually, it was a bit late in the evening. It was more into night. But I was discussing Agenda 30. I wouldn't recommend it. It's not a good subject of discussion with AI or otherwise, to be perfectly honest. However, I think many of us have actually started using AI. When I first started using it, I thought felt it meant sort of American intelligence, because it Americanized absolutely everything, which I disliked sort of totally. And I couldn't get away from that for a while. However, I've trained it some. It does now actually call me Hamish, which I do appreciate. It doesn't give me a name that I can actually sort of call AI itself. However, it does have its great uses. And one of the things, particularly in the, as far as we're concerned, within the conveyancing world, it can be quite damaging if you're not careful. Because it can get things wrong. And a lot of people do actually sort of rely on it for too much. If you're a creative person, it can be helpful. But I do think that we as humans have better ideas. However, the topic today, what we're looking for and what we always strive to do, particularly in the type of work that I do on a day-to-day basis, and Rowan in particular sort of his field that he works alongside estate agents, what we're trying to do is to speed up what is going on within the property world. If we can speed things up for people, but do it accurately, it makes a world of difference. But the thing is, how accurate is AI on things like valuing properties?
Well, Rowan, welcome to the show. The rise of AI has been inexorable. And then I think it has to be said before we get going into this in any great depth, that if you try and act like King Canute and put your hand up to the wave of AI as it hits, then it will overcome you, and you'll be the fool not to have actually looked at it to see where you can take advantage. But as Hamish so rightly said, one has to be careful, doesn't one?
Yeah, you do have to be careful. I mean, with what I do on a daily basis, I write content. So I don't, and I can spot AI content. I don't like the look of AI content, and I think there's a danger in using AI for certain things. But nevertheless, if I don't embrace AI where I can embrace it, I will be left behind in a world of other content writers. So I'm using AI. I'm not using it to write for me, but I would use it to do a lot of research. So I'll use Perplexity to do a lot of fact checking and pull data and pull stats and pull patterns and pull trends that I can write about on behalf of estate agents. And when I've written my article, I will then give that to Claude and say, can you run through this? Can you give me any pointers? What's the flow like? Can you give me a readability score on the Flesch Reading Ease scale so that I know, whether it's suitable for people who are, kind of 15, 16 readership. That's kind of where we writers should be writing for, to hit a sort of general audience of adults. We still want to be aiming for 15, 16-year-old minds. So I use it for all of that sort of thing, and it will help me hone it, and it will help me then write an article that would otherwise take me 8 or 9 hours to fully write. I'll be able to do it in about 4 hours. So from that point of view, AI is a really useful tool. And there are things that estate agents do use AI for and should use AI for. And I think what this podcast is about is whether estate agents should be using it for some of the technical things like doing evaluation. And that's an interesting topic because part of the debate always is whether estate agents should really value anything. And there's an argument that really estate agents' job isn't to value, but estate agents are there to help set a market price. And that's where
they have to be able to at least stick a wet finger in the air and say, well, I think you're going to be aiming for this part of the marketplace.
That's exactly right. Now, so you can't call it a valuation, but the market price has to be set well enough that it achieves the job. Because and this is where it becomes a danger, whether AI is doing it or whether humans are doing it. The danger is getting it wrong and having something that then languishes on the market for too many days. And actually, I think there's a stat that says if a property is on the market for 100 days before it achieves a sale, that sale agreed, which is still not a sale, has basically a 50% chance of falling through, of never actually going through. So if you're on the market for 100 days before you actually get an offer agreed, there's a 50% chance you'll never actually sell it. If you sell, I think it was within sort of 4 or 6 weeks, if you get that offer agreed, you have a 94% chance of your sale going through. So actually getting that valuation, and perhaps part of this is because when the real valuers come along, the bank's valuers, and they say, yep, that's okay, we'll lend you the money, or they'll say, no, actually you're paying £30,000 too much here, we'll only lend you this much money. Then sometimes sales fall through, and of course that's much more likely to happen if it's been on the market for 100 days because it's overpriced. So that's why there's an importance of getting it right. Not just,
but there's an interesting point to be made here, which is that typically, would you agree that estate agents tend to value it too high because there's pressure from the sellers, or it must be worth more than that? And then at the bucket end, you've got the banks and the valuers who undervalue it because they want to conserve their funds. They don't want to overpromise and so on. When the actual real value is probably somewhere in between.
Well, I don't know. I mean, estate agents are under pressure from more than just the sellers. So they're under pressure from themselves. They're under pressure to put something on the market and have something to talk about. They're under pressure from a boss, potentially, if they're an employed estate agent who's saying, look, wait, you haven't hit your target this week. We need 5 instructions. Right. You're only on 2 and it's Friday. They're under pressure from other estate agents because they know they're one of 3 that's going out to value. And they know that this agent said 400,000, that agent said 430,000, and they think, well, you know what, if I go and say 450,000, then I might be more likely to get this job. And they'll be very careful and say, look, I think it's worth trying 450,000. The market's pretty strong at the moment. There's no point trying 430 because you may as well be at 425. So we can try 450. It's a bracket on Rightmove. We're going to get lots more eyes on. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll gain that feedback from you, and we can always review this in a month. And that sounds like a perfectly reasonable conversation that the estate agent's having. But there's another statistic. I need to pull it out of my sleeve, so I don't know what this number is. But if your property is reduced in value, it reduces your chance of selling. So it's not just how long it lasts on the market. It's whether it sells the first time round at the first price, or whether it takes a price reduction. So many properties do sell after a price reduction, but the ones that sell without having a price reduction sell. If they sell, it'll be quicker, obviously, but it will be usually a better price and then a more successful sale in terms of more chance of it actually going through to a completion, which is the end goal. So getting it, there's all sorts of reasons not to get it wrong, and estate agents are human and therefore they're fallible. So that's where there can be an argument for using AI, but even presented with AI, it's whether or not it's believable enough and juicy enough and exciting enough for the vendor or the estate agent who's in a tight space and thinks, oh God, I need to get this instruction, as humans to listen to that even artificial intelligence advice.
Well, let me give you a case in point. Recently, as that happened, I had my house valued. And before I had my house valued by a professional valuer, not an estate agent, what I did was I thought I'd go to ChatGPT and Claude, and I said to them both, using what information you get from Rightmove, from the local area, I want you to give a rough valuation of where you think my house should sit. And I bought it for 417,000, 6 years ago, and it came up and said it's probably worth about 440. And I thought, well, hang on a moment, it's probably moved a little bit beyond then. And then I did some of my own research. I live in 12-house hamlet. There's nothing else for miles around, and only one of those houses has sold, and that was sold just before I bought the place. So nothing sold in that time. So I can understand it's couching it in those terms. I was in fact valued at near enough 600,000 because I've done improvements and so on. So it just goes to show if sometimes the overly reliance on, say, an AI form of could be potentially disastrous.
Yeah, it could be, and I think that so I think there's going to be an over reliance. I think the more I see of a state agency, the more I think they are over relying on AI, and they might over rely on it so much they do themselves out of a job, because it will only take some really clever tech bro to sweep in with a more convincing platform than's currently out there that allows basically sellers to do it DIY. They can get their AI valuation, they can get a photographer out for 200 quid to take photos and get a floor plan. They can get AI to write them a quite convincing property description, and they could get it listed on Rightmove through some kind of conduit platform like a sales version of Open Rent, for example. That means that they've got their house listed for, I don't know, 300 quid or something, and they have to pay estate agents fees, and it can all be done. This is an unlikely reality, but it's a possible reality if estate agents do just go, so heavy on AI that consumers start thinking, well, if everything's done by robots, what's the point in employing these humans? I may as well just get robots to do it.
I watched a program last night, just before I passed back to Hamish. I watched a program last night about robots, specifically the ones that were made, the famous one, Atlas, and Spot. What's it? Boston Dynamics, who were taken over by two other companies, not Google and some venture capitalists, none of which could make it work. It was still phenomenally expensive. You needed to have a whole bunch of people around it to stop it from falling apart spontaneously. But, and here's the interesting but to it all, this other company, Daewoo, came in, who make cars, Daewoo make cars, solved all the problems that were keeping it from being available. And suddenly now Atlas is back in the picture, and it's got advanced orders coming out the wazoo. The whole problem is, I think it needs an intelligent human mind to work out the way in which to make this work, where it doesn't necessarily put people out of a job. But in Daewoo's case, they brought the robot on, and here's the joke, because they wanted to reduce the number of people in their Daewoo factories.
Yeah, exactly.
That was their initial. I know, and this is surely indicative of the way it's going.
Yeah, I think, and there's the risk. And what I would say, and I don't want to, Hamish has been cut out of this conversation, so we need to bring him back in.
What
I would like to do when it comes to,
sorry,
when it comes to valuations, I mean, it's hard. It's a hard thing doing a valuation, right? So a lot of it, estate agent, a lot of it is based on something that's slightly intangible. So you can get all of this data and all these stats, but actually you're not valuing it. You're selling it for a customer, and you go, look, I've got a couple who are moving from London, and they've got a budget of £650,000. Their ideal location is a semi-rural hamlet, maybe 12 to 20 houses maximum of individual properties, and yours is perfect for them. So actually, I think that this couple who've got a £650,000 budget would be very interested in your house. Now, what's it worth? If they come along and it is perfect for them, they want to pay you $650, then it's worth $650. And that's the mind of an estate agent at work, rather than anything else that tells you a valuation. But when it comes to AI and AI valuations, and just even, I mean, this isn't such a new thing. Zoopla's been doing it for years, and Valpal and all of these things that give you kind of online valuation tools that base it on a postcode and there's an algorithm and it will work it out. And in your case, it hasn't worked out because it's taken a previous sale number and it's applied a metric and it's got there without taking into account it's had an extension, had this and this and this. But you could if you input it correctly into an AI program, it should be able to approximate it a little better and actually probably the best guide is looking at what average house price per square foot is, or per square meter within a postcode area. And there's a very good site called House Metric that does that. And then once you've got your EPC done and it tells you what the actual square footage of that house is, because it's been measured by somebody, then you can say, okay, well, this house is 1,100 square foot, and the average pound per square foot is whatever it is. So this house it's worth £330,000 according to that metric. And that would and whether it's worth 330,000 on the nose, or it's worth 320,000, or it's probably worth 345,000, it's close. Yeah. It's close enough for an estate agent to go out with something pretty accurate in mind, and then look at it and go, okay, it's roughly 330,000, but you have got this extra garden that others don't have, and you are south facing, which is a little bit favourable. And actually, you've got 3 spaces on this driveway, and most have only got 2 in this area. So let's kind of think it's probably more likely to be appealing. 330 might be a little bit too low. Let's go 340, 350 and see what happens. And there's at least some justification behind it. But I still think it needs that human touch to go out and look at it with AI, with AI material or information or some sort of judgment that still needs a human eye to go, yes, but, or to go, yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I think, because these 12 3-bed semis on the estate that all look like you have all sold for that. So that's what it's worth.
So, Hamish, robots notwithstanding, it seems to me that that is just a series of complex evaluations that a human is making. Could it not be that an AI ends up learning how to do exactly that?
Maybe 2050, it could get closer. We do have the consideration. And this is always the case. And it doesn't, when you speak to a professional, I mean, it's one of the great advantages having somebody like Rowan along to explain all of this to us, because we're putting out podcasts to try and create awareness in the minds of maybe the general public, maybe some specialists that are out there, but they can see the complexities. I mean, what came to me as Rowan was speaking was a remarkably good song from one of John Lennon's albums called Mind Games. And I just thought the whole thing, how the heck that value is reached effectively to get it right. There is so much involved. And I cannot see it being done through AI. It needs somebody, somebody with Rowan's skill. And there are so many skillful estate agents out there. And some of them will look at that, and that makes a quality estate agent, and that makes more effective valuation of the property. And I think where we actually sort of look, when we look in the type of work that I do and the work of the conveyancers themselves do, particularly the sort of property lawyers, this is what makes property lawyers, because they've got that grounding in law. There are certain aspects which they will see that other people will miss out completely. And as we've found with some of the experts that we get on board, particularly Zara, who is tremendous on this, there's all of these little hold-ups, all these little things that somebody can damage themselves by buying their way into a particular property which is unsuitable for them for a number of reasons.
Well, having spoken to Zara at length about this offline, she says the most frustrating thing for her is she does all this work, she points out all the areas in which they should back off or at least ask for further clarification. And they're so desperate to get their hands on the keys that they go, doesn't matter, just let me in there.
I guess every estate agent is looking for people like that. And it can happen. But I think that evaluation, I mean, that was so effective and so well put that. So I think we've got it, we've hit the mark here. You really need to go to an estate. You don't know quite how the evaluations has gone through, And from a seller's perspective, you can't necessarily rely on that valuation, as Gareth explained there. When you went to great lengths to try to evaluate his property, I mean, over £100,000 out.
That was it made me fall off my chair when they came back to me and said, we think it's worth, this is from the bank, we think it's worth 600,000. And I'm thinking, hang on a moment.
Now, this is a great thing when you're looking at both, and this is what Rowan is saying to us. It can work some of the time, and it can be very, very effective some of the time.
I think
it does need that human impact.
It can give you a guide if you've given it enough parameters to actually look at, and I think that's where there probably weren't enough parameters in that first kind of ChatGPT conversation. But ChatGPT isn't necessarily going to be I'm not disparaging ChatGPT, but they will be specific.
Disparage away. I've got no loyalty.
So there will be specific estate agent software that's been manipulated better to take these parameters on board and actually think about it in a little bit more detail. I mean, probably Zoopla has probably got its own on its website that is more advanced to do property valuation than ChatGPT.
Well, no, I use Zoopla as well, and that also came in very low as well.
So the question is, so let's say you've got these two valuations. You're not going to go with the low one. You're going to put your house on the market for 600 and whatever thousand, as the bank's valuation suggested. Now, you might have 3 estate agents come out and tell you different valuations, but let's say you go with the bank. At what point, how long are you on the market for without a sale before you, as a customer, believe that bank got it wrong? And how long would it take before you think that ChatGPT actually got it right? Because I don't think there's any bridging that gap between 600 and something thousand and 400 and something thousand. You'll never experiment enough. You'll never experiment enough from that value here to find out whether this value here was true, because you'll stop at 575 and think that you've been robbed if you're not getting that, and that it's the estate agent's fault and the market's to blame and the Iran war's causing it, and their photos aren't good enough, and actually we should have waited till spring renewal, and all of these other excuses that come out because you're human as well. So I'll tell you,
Ronan, I'll tell you what apparently made all the difference. I have full solar with all the batteries lined up in a neat row on the side of the building, and that seemed to make all the difference. We have we have like a £50 energy bill monthly now. And that seemed to sway things one direction or another. Thank you so much, Rowan, for taking the time out to be with us today.
How much your energy bills without?
Oh, they were
because it's conversation to have.
Well, remember it was pretty high. We were spending over 350 a month on average, and that was because we've got.
So that's it's a £3,500 a year saving.
Yes,
£3,000 a year savings. So 10 years, it's £30,000. Was the difference more than £30,000? Well, that's weird, right? Because mathematically, it's not.
Well, no, apparently,
I think this is still.
No, I think that was part of it. He mentioned that to me, but I think it was also all the extra lagging and the fact we had a roof replaced and the fact we built outbuildings and etc., all that sort of stuff. But look, thank you so much for taking the time.
Probably worth more than anything else there, but anyway, yeah. Well, anyway, that was very enjoyable, guys. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and Hamish, great insights as ever, and to all of you watching. We have more of these conversations throughout the week. Please don't hesitate to pop along. Next one is tomorrow, Ipsy Kind of Magic, celebrating everything the Association of Independent Personal Search Agents. So it's about searching and interesting issues around that. On Thursday, we have Property Quorum, which you have 3 or 4 property experts all battling it out, talking about topics which I think you'll find intriguing. And on Friday, we're talking about cladding matters, all about building safety and an extension thereof. Some interesting things kind of happening in that show has been quoted both in the House of Lords and the House of Commons and even in Australia, because it covers topics that they're all very interested in. So keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please, in these difficult times, Strait of Hormuz notwithstanding, look after your mental health. Bye-bye now.